We'll wait another minute or so while people sort of wander in into the room. So. Great. I always find it fascinating to watch what books people have behind them. I was looking at your shelf, Miller.
Yeah, that's Brene Brown and the workbook that I published. And then Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me.
There you go. A great selection.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I've just got a few slides I'd like to share with you in a few minutes. I just want to leave those down for a minute and just say hello. And wonder how folks are doing this morning. Anything you want to share about where you're calling from or what feels important to you for this morning or this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you are in the world.
I'll go first. I just jumped in here at the last minute. Peter Wolf from Berlin, Germany.
Okay.
And yeah, it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon here.
Okay.
Doing pretty well. We have some nice sunny weather here this afternoon, and yeah, getting organized for next week.
Great. Yeah, I will actually be in Berlin in December for the coaching conference at the university there. And I'm hoping that your good weather continues. Last time I was there, they had a blizzard.
Yeah. Can't make any promises.
I know. Well, see what you can do. That'd be great. Welcome. How about for others? Who else is with us this morning?
I'm Miller Caton. I'm calling in from New York City.
Okay.
It's 10 a.m., 10:03 a.m. right now. So I've been up pretty early, got my coffee, excited. It was important for me to learn today. I'm just curious. I think curiosity has really brought me here at this point. I know that you're getting ready to open up your enrollment for the cohort for next year. So I'm just kind of curious to see what happens and see what's coming up.
Great.
I'm Karen. Karen Suter. I'm in Seattle in Washington, and it's still dark.
I know. I could have sworn it was just summer.
Well, that's the thing. I went away for 2 weeks, and September vanished, and suddenly it was dark in the mornings.
Yeah, I know, because I live in Portland, so I can feel it's just sort of snuck up. Yeah.
I'm really excited to be here. I'm sort of reached a point in my coaching and career and life when I'm really looking for something a bit different and deeper, and I'm exploring this opportunity. So thank you. It's nice to see everybody.
Yeah.
I am in Maryland, and it's a beautiful sunny day today. So I had taken your narrative coach class a while back and just loved the approach. And it really opened things up a little bit for me with the coaching. Recently, I've been adding energy work to that and have been seeing great results, and just always curious about what else you have to add.
Okay.
I just love your approach to things.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm Alexei. I'm in Turkey at the moment. It's 5 p.m. already. I am a presentation skills coach and trainer, so I've been designing narratives for other people for the last 15 years, and I decided to look at the other part of it.
Okay, good.
David Galloway. I'm calling this morning from Atlanta, Georgia. My office is right here in the shadow of the Atlanta Braves Stadium, which I'm going to have about 24,000 of my closest friends drop in a few hours. So, I've really enjoyed David. I've really enjoyed your work, and I keep looking for the right place. I've done couple of programs with you, but looking for the right place to drop in and be a part and continue in the learning.
Okay. All right. Thanks, David.
Hey, everyone, I'm Darren Eggett. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm kind of in the Portland, Washington neck of the country. But I'm here largely because of the book, Narrative Coaching. I'm slowly working my way through it.
All right. You even brought Eeyore with you, or
Hobbes.
Starting to look at it.
Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah, Hobbes. I couldn't remember that. I couldn't remember. Oh, there's Calvin. Okay, he was hiding behind you. Hmm. And what have you appreciated about the book so far? What has it spoken to you about?
Well, I guess I should also mention that I have a background as a storyteller. I'm a published writer of short fiction. So any of the narrative things that I have picked up on over my career in writing, I'm looking for ways that I can blend the two interests.
Okay. All right, well, welcome. Laura's just joined us. We were just doing a little bit of a brief introduction, so.
Yeah, I was listening. Sorry, I just had an egg on, so I wanted to finish my egg before I came fully present here, but I did catch your intros.
Okay.
My name is Laura. I'm actually in rural Quebec in Canada, which is near Ottawa, the nation's capital. And this is unceded Algonquin territory,
Okay.
home of the Anishinaabe peoples.
Hmm.
I came to your work actually through a fellow practitioner. I have taken some coaching training, and I'm in the process of, I think, quitting my job and becoming a coach. That's a strong possibility of what is happening. And your work was recommended by someone who is familiar with my approach.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so
Right.
much for opening your doors today.
You're welcome. We've got a couple more people coming.
Hi, yeah, I make it short and sweet. My name is Christopher. I'm calling in from Taiwan. I'm an integral development coach, and I am calling in from Taiwan.
I have a training type thing I was just pulling.
Okay. I just muted him for a second, so you could finish, Christopher.
Yeah, I was actually basically finished just saying
Okay.
that we had wonderful weather here, and I just returned from a lovely walk, and it's 10 p.m. here.
Oh, okay, great. Well, let's see if we can get Alex back in.
Greetings, I'm Erin from Saskatchewan, Canada. We just had our Thanksgiving yesterday. So
Okay.
it's a windy, cool day here. And I've been studying systemic team coaching and complex adaptive systems with Peter Hawkins and David Clutterbuck. I am a longtime strategy facilitator, so I love facilitation. I do love some coaching, but I think integrative development sounds like the right mix for me. So I'm here because I'm curious, and I haven't done your narrative coaching, David, but I'm a fan of your work from a distance. So
okay. Fine, thank you. All right, well, so I have some slides. We may or may not use them. You may decide they're not necessary, or you want to do something else, and that's totally fine as well. So let me just give you a bit of a background for myself and kind of what we're going to explore today. So we have three programs for next year. One is the narrative coaching, for which I'm most known, but then we also have an integrative development program, and I'll share just very briefly about that at the end, but it really is based on larger projects I've done over the years, sort of taking narrative coaching to scale and moving kind of even beyond coaching, and happy to share more about that later on. But it's the way I've designed programs and projects for 15 or 20 years. And it'll be my next book, which will be out in the middle of next year. And then we're bringing back a pilot we did last year of a program called Narrative Release. during the pandemic, many of us recognized that a lot of kind of how we were in the world and how we showed up for our clients wasn't enough for the complexity and the demands our clients were placing on us, because we were all stressed out and, you know, agitated and concerned and confused and all kinds of emotions. And so it wasn't about doubling down on our methodology. It was about showing up as a fuller human being to our clients. And that obviously has to start with ourselves. And so it's a program that it won't have a certification, at least in the near future. It's really just a way for practitioners to ground themselves in the sort of spiritual philosophy that underpins all of our work, to sort of deepen their own ability to be with clients. So we won't teach you things so much as guide you through a series of practices to kind of help deepen the mindset that we bring to all the work that we do. So that's what we're doing. I've got just a couple of practices. So those of you who are completely new to this work, I just want to give you a couple of experiences rather than me talk a lot. So I'm just going to put up the slides for a second, and there we go. There we go. All right. So we like to think of our programs, and I like to think of this session as a campfire around which people gather. So one of the things that we're very clear about at the moment Institute is we're not really a training company, because we're not here to teach you. We're here to create conditions in which people can learn. And so we've kind of decentered the material in a way, we've decentered me in a way to help people have the experience and the learning opportunity that makes most sense for them. As part of that, we've been launching a pilot of our new Threshold Lab, which is a way for students and graduates to connect to each other and meet around campfires, around topics and things that are very important to them. And so that will launch in full in January and will be a part of the membership for all of our programs. So I thought it was always good to start with a bit of poetry. So I thought this would be a wonderful this way to begin. So this is actually a photo taken from the other side of the west side of Canada. This is actually on Pender Island, looking back at the San Juans in the States. But for me, it felt like a nice capture of the spirit of what we do, which is we're not trying to make a lot of things happen in our work. We're actually trying to pay attention to what's actually emerging that we can do something with our clients. And so it's a mindset that's very different than sort of more of the acquisitive sort of style a lot in coaching and other sort of bodies of work. And so one of the things that's really important for that is the three things I just wanted to share very briefly. One is about the role of what's called self-regulation in our work, in whatever practices we're doing. One is the possibility that we could actually work with a lot more ease in our practices, again, regardless of what we're doing. And then I wanted to share you one of the sort of principles from our ID work, which is a lot of us as adults and a lot of the adults we work with have forgotten how to learn. And we often equate training with learning, which if you were to take that program, you discover isn't the case. And so I want to just give you a brief experience of that. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions as we go. You're welcome to use the chat box, or just we're a small enough group, we can just call out or raise your hand and we'll find you. Yeah, and I want this to be such that you get whatever you came for that need met before you leave. So let me just talk a bit about self-regulation. So one of the things, so I've been doing a lot of supervision lately again, and one of the things I observe about a lot of coaches which would be true for consultants and facilitators, is we often get caught up in our own methodology. And what I started to realize through all my work with attachment theory and a number of other pieces in narrative coaching and narrative release in particular, is that it doesn't really matter as much what our clients learn from us or learn from whatever it is we're doing if they're unable to do anything with it. And a lot of the barriers for them to do something with what we're working on comes because they're not able to self-regulate themselves in order to access what they now know or now have capacity to do. And so we live in a time when staying self-regulated is not always easy. And so in our programs, we teach practitioners how to do that for themselves and how to do that with our clients. So if this idea is sort of new for you, I have a slide here just for some information about self-regulation. So I'll let you read this and I'll make a couple of comments. Yeah. So self-regulation, when we are born, we don't have the capacity to regulate. We rely on caregivers and others around us to learn how to do that for ourselves, to get a sense for how we are, how we feel, what's going on. And so oftentimes when our clients, say in a workshop or in a coaching session, are struggling with something, it's often because they can't regulate themselves to kind of come back to center. And, most adults that have been in the workplace long enough have pretty much have had a training on pretty much anything you can imagine by now. When I used to do a lot of executive coaching, more than I do now, right now, some of these people had been to, like say we're doing a workshop on feedback. Some of them have been to dozens of these and still weren't any better at giving feedback than they were the first time. And it wasn't because they didn't know or they didn't care. It was more that they couldn't regulate themselves to not fall back into the traps that often got them stuck with feedback before, like giving advice as opposed to giving feedback, or being a bit more derogatory in their feedback than they really intended, but they didn't know how to bring up these difficult issues. And so I just started to realize that that one of the things that we need to model for our clients and we need to invite them into is to notice when they're dysregulated and notice when they're not present to themselves, and through our modeling and our invitation to help them kind of move to a place where any learning or development that's going to occur for them has a chance to actually land. And so, and because these patterns that they've developed, and so maybe when somebody feels too much emotion or they are upset, they shut down. So that's a pattern they've evolved over time. And oftentimes you'll learn more about your clients by just asking yourself, what role are they asking me to play in this? Oh, they're asking me to calm them down because they're not quite sure how to do that for themselves. Or they don't feel it's not socially acceptable for them to be angry. And so they're going to provoke us so that we can bring anger into the room. And so for me, through the work that we do with our clients, we help them rather than try to, we're not therapists per se, so we're not trying to address the roots of this, or we're not asking about their childhood. We're just observing how they are in the session and what they might want to learn about themselves, to be aware of when they get activated, when they get out of sorts, and then how they can learn to manage themselves so that they can become more knowledgeable about themselves. And for me, I find that part of why I don't do normal training and haven't for quite a long time is because I'm trying to help people in many ways grow as a human being, so that whatever the content is for the particular program that we're engaging in, that we're relating it to their specific needs, and we're helping them move to a place where they're able to actually enact and embody what they're discovering in the program that we're doing. So I'd like to just give you a direct experience of that for yourself. And before we do that, I'd like to just check in and see if there's any reflections, questions that you'd like to ask about regulation itself before we have some fun. Put my clock up so there's time. Any thoughts? All right, so I will dive in. Okay, so again, so much of what I observe in a lot of coaches is they ask lots of questions, often too many, most of which are not going to be, there's David, necessary or relevant in the end for the conversation. So the biggest thing we do for our clients in, say, narrative coaching is we invite them to situate themselves. Not to change anything at all, not to get anywhere, but to help them notice themselves. Hello, David. Welcome. So this is something I've adapted from a very dear friend of mine who's a Buddhist teacher. And I find it just a very simple sort of mnemonic, if you will, to help us for ourselves even to notice how we are and to find our way back to a greater sense of self-regulation. So if we're feeling distressed by something or worried about something, it's just a way to bring us back to a place, which is what we're doing for our clients and all the work that we teach. So what I'd like to invite you to do is, if you wouldn't mind, if it's disorienting or not what you enjoy, you don't have to close your eyes. Most people find it helps reduce the stimuli and makes it easier to focus. But if that doesn't work for you, then that's fine. Keep your eyes open. But I'd like you, if you can, just to close your eyes and just notice how your breath is. Most of us don't pay attention to our breathing most of the time. And so just notice kind of how your breathing is without trying to change anything. And maybe you can feel your feet on the floor and feel grounded in your chair. And just to relax into this moment. And what I'd like you to do is, from this space, just bring into your mind's eye maybe something that you're thinking about, worried about, agitated about. It could have been a small tiff with someone an hour ago. It could have been a concern about a client. Could be thinking about your future, but just something that's sort of creating a ripple in your system. Maybe there's a bit of a lack of full regulation around this as you're preoccupied with. But just bring something into your mind's eye as simply as possible. And as you do so, I would like you just to let out a big sigh and exhale deeply. And just notice if it allows your mind to start quieting. What you were thinking about is still there, but maybe it's there more softly now. And it's maybe just there by itself. And if you need to, you can exhale again, just sort of breathing out through your mouth. And just allow yourself to pause rather than having to worry about whatever's on your mind. And as you pause, you may notice that your body is relaxing. It's not having to hold on to whatever was on your mind before. And you may find in this, you have more access to your heart now, because you're not up in your head, worried or agitated or concerned. And just feel yourself relaxing into your chair. Maybe you can sort of move your shoulders around. Is there any tension in your body that you need to let go? And rather than holding on to whatever was on your mind before, what if you were just to trust emergence? To allow whatever's there to reveal itself, rather than having to carry it all or figure it all out. And our body often follows our mind. And so if our mind is agitated, our body gets agitated in its own way. As we start to relax, you might notice that you're starting to feel a sense of openness. Now that you're not holding whatever was on your mind with sort of a death grip, you might allow yourself to begin to notice there's other perspectives here. I actually have some inner wisdom here. I actually can open up to my own capacity to be with whatever was bothering me when I started. One of the best ways to check how open you feel is just to put your hand on your belly and see if it moves when you're breathing. And if not, try that. See if you can just concentrate, if you will, or just notice your stomach moving in and out as you breathe, and noticing if there's tension there that you're still holding. What if you were to open up and let that be? What you'll discover is that when you allow yourself to open, it's easier for you to speak the truth about what's actually happening for you. And so if something's emerged for you, some piece of wisdom about your situation or yourself, maybe just take a minute and softly open your eyes and just take a note, write a few words, a sentence that might feel true for you now in a way it might not have at the very beginning. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back into the room if they were. Right. Well, this is a more literal experience. We wouldn't often do this as directly with clients. Just gives you sort of a feel for what our work is like, in the sense that we're not trying to take clients anywhere. We're not trying to solve their problems. We're not trying to fix anything. We're letting sort of that inner knower, inner healer in the person kind of come out and help them come to a place where they feel enabled to be aware of and address whatever is important to them. And so when they can, so we do teach them this model often as a way for them in the course of their day, when they forget, to kind of come back to center in themselves and act with more integrity and wholeness. So I'm just curious for you, if you'd be willing to share anything that emerged for you in doing this.
I'm happy to
No, go
share.
ahead.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
Peter.
The biggest shift that happened for me was in the trust emergence. May have something to do with that those to me personally is a powerful frame, but it also just brought me back to a conversation I was having yesterday with a friend who was really struggling with decisions that she had made. So what really struck me about this framework was the realization about how much more space can be created in that space of coaching or consultation or friendship or whatever you want to call it. It's something that I notice showing up a lot. It's really showing up for me a lot with people seeking my advice, is that like people are terrified about making the wrong decision. So this framework was really just about there's more than just the strategy and the thinking. So the trust emergence is really powerful shift.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there someone else who would like to share?
I was going to add to that. I noticed that when I do that, like I do this on occasion, but not on a regular basis, but I wanted to do more of. But I noticed that when, like you said, with the exhale, you just allow and things just softened. It was just such a nicer thing. And like Peter mentioned, people are so afraid to make a choice or to, what if I'm wrong? Like, so what if you are? It's just information. So it's just a matter of, I think, for myself personally, I often don't recognize when there's tension in my body. And when I do notice that and I start to work with that, everything just gets clearer and easier. So it's a great practice.
Yeah, thank you. And I find it even more important now. I've been doing this for years, but when the pandemic and everything else that came with it seems to have challenged people's confidence in themselves, confidence in knowing what to do. And so it just feels like helping them come back to themselves is often our best gift to them. And from that place, they can either make better choices or at least be at peace with the choices they made. And the future seems less certain. So people still have a need to want to feel certain. So oftentimes they grab onto things that may not be helpful to them. So, yeah. Anybody else want to share? And then we'll kind of move on a bit.
I was touched by the pause. It's something that I teach, and particularly I've been a meditation student for 50 years, and so, but what I've introduced in my life, and also the people that I'm working with, is brief moments of doing that during the day, rather than my normal 20 minutes at the start of the day, 20 minutes in the day. In between is just chaotic. It's just my spin cycle. And so this is a way to interrupt my spin cycle so that I can center and be present in the moment rather than just going crazy. And what I was thinking about today, David, if you pause this, is I'm coaching. I've been coaching for 5 years. The CEO of the only healthcare system in Lee County, which is Fort Myers. And I'm on the phone with this guy like every 2 or 3 hours. And one of the things that, at some point I thought my job was to, tell him how to do what he's doing in a crisis. But really my job is to quiet his ass down.
Yeah.
So that he can rely on his incredible skills, and plus a team that we've spent a lot of time building up. But in any case, this is a practice I've taught to this CEO, and it's really been helpful.
Great, thank you, David. So I'd like to move on if it's okay, just so we So I just love this one, one of my favorite slides that we use. So I just wanted to share this with you. So oftentimes when people come to our programs, they bring giant rocks with them of all the things they think they're supposed to do as a coach or as a consultant, and they're wearing the wrong shoes or carrying giant boulders. And so we get a lot of people that sometimes feel in part some version of what's on the left, and we invite them to put most of that down. And you can always come back and pick parts of that, but we want people to feel like the woman on the right. So for me, one of the things that we focus a lot on in our program is that helping us do this for ourselves so that we can first, and so then we can do this for others. So the narrative release program is really all about this. It's all about developing ourselves and deepening our capacity to fully accept and be with whatever our clients are presenting, as David was saying, so what was a normal coaching scenario now is the man's been wiped out in a hurricane. So now his needs are different than they were a week or 2 weeks ago. So I just want to share just a piece here. I'll just share a couple of ideas about narrative coaching, and then we'll give you one more practice, and then we'll see what questions you have. But again, as we go, things come up, just raise your hand or speak up, do whatever you need to do. So this is how client coaching is often taught. Clients come in, they tell us a story, we deduce what the problem is in the story, and then we help them find a solution. I don't know about you, but my life never looks like that. And what we do a lot of narrative coaching is to help people stay in natural human conversation, where there's not linearity, there's not direct cause and effect. Our job is not to solve problems. The solution is very rarely a direct result of figuring out the problem. And so we try to, and so we don't, in narrative coaching, we don't tend to set goals unless it's super important for the client. We don't set agendas for conversations. We meet our clients as they are when they show up for who they are. We listen to their story. We notice what's present in their story and in their storytelling that might be of value to them in terms of helping them understand themselves, and then looking at what might need to change in terms of elements of the story to yield a different outcome for them. So rather than having this sort of view, which is very linear, flat, and I find not real most of the time, we think of this more in a very different way. So we're aware of the context. So one of the other sort of drawbacks of a traditional method is, I think for me, an error that coaching made early on, which was to wed itself too closely to psychology, in the sense that we focus too much on the individual. So the traditional view on the left there is completely out of context. It's positioned in isolation, as if the problem was in the person. And so we don't necessarily assume that the problem is actually in the person. And so we don't even assume that there even has to be a problem. But we look at that, we're aware, sort of sociologically and otherwise, the context in which this conversation is taking place. Which is informing what we're doing. We're recognizing that all four of these elements are present at the same time. And that we're working in what we think of as the field, which is the energetic sort of space between yourself and a client in coaching. And noticing what of these four elements is showing up in the conversation. First, to help the client to be aware of themselves, which is why self-regulation is so important. And secondly, to explore their story, to say, I wonder why this story, of all the stories they could have chosen, is the one that's here now. And I'm really, then to be curious and to listen to how the story is formed and told as you move through that conversation and bring those elements into actually the field itself. And so for me, our focus is really on what's happening in the field between us. We don't ask lots of questions because, again, most of them are not necessary. We just help the client become present to available in the field of the conversation to see what they might want to look at for themselves. And so in that, part of why we can do that is because of this. So in narrative coaching, we don't hold the view that we're doing anything to or for our client other than helping them to access the part of themselves that actually knows what to do next, or can discover what to do next, or just needs safety to experiment with what to do next. And so what we find, again, when we can regulate ourselves, we're not leaning in trying to be overly helpful. We're not trying to identify problems so that we can be clever and seen as clever to fix them. We're noticing what's actually trying to happen in this conversation and how do I support that process as it's emerging in real time in the conversation. So if you were to observe me, some of you might have done when I did my demo through WBEX coach, and you were to ask me, where do you sense this conversation is going? And what do you sense is going to happen 5 or 10 minutes from now? I would have no idea, nor do I care. Because I trust that the process that we're in is going to help the client discover what the client needs to discover through my witnessing, through my listening, through my inquiry. But I'm really trying to help them find what they need within themselves or around themselves to support what it is they're trying to achieve. And for me, then my greatest aim is they're not going to remember pretty much anything we say in coaching, but they're going to, when we do this well, they're never going to forget how it felt to be with us. And because it's their race to run, it's not ours. So I'm not interested. They don't care about narrative coaching. They just want to feel better or do something differently or accomplish whatever was important to them. So that's where we keep the focus in this session. And when I just one last little piece, and then I want to just see before we move into the last part, what questions you have about narrative coaching. But now I just lost my thought. I'll stop until it comes back. But anyways, so for me, the desire in narrative coaching is to help people to free themselves, to create a new story that works better for them. And that starts by helping them pay attention to the story they have now. All right, so that's just a couple of thoughts about narrative coaching. Obviously, I've been teaching this for a long time, but I'd much rather hear what's interesting to you and what questions you have before we move on.
One thing that struck me, especially with this slide, is I started out with traditional coaching, an ICF program that was very stilted and very regulated. And then when I found your narrative coach, I thought, oh, it's much more natural. And it just felt better as far as how I went. But I also, at the same time, was struggling to get the concepts and to really put it all together.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that I started doing energy work. And as I'm looking at this slide, I'm realizing this is what I do now. It comes naturally now, just having all of that come together. And it's just, I remember one client saying to me, wow, I realize we have all the answers inside. We just have to figure it out. Yeah. And that's what it's about. So I just love this concept. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, the old cliche in coaching was that the client has all the answers. I don't really believe that, because if they did, they wouldn't come to us. They wouldn't need us. I just sort of shift that slightly to feel like that everything we need, it's our core principle. Everything we need is right in front of us.
Right.
And
They just-
so, yeah, go ahead, Julie. Go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, they just need help to learn how to access.
Yeah.
It's out
and
there. It's in the field, like you mentioned here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I started coaching 25 years ago, if I had 2 or 3 clients in a day, I'd be exhausted when I got home, exhausted. And I thought, oh, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so when I finished my PhD and created narrative coaching, I've had days now where I'm doing intense coaching across a day. Right before, literally like days before the pandemic started, I was in Australia working with all the leaders at the very top of the Victorian government, with massive intensity for a month straight. And I felt as good at the end of every day as I did at the beginning of the entire project. Why? Because I trusted that everything we needed was in front of us. It was not my job to fix their government, to solve the pandemic, to put out their bushfires. My job was to be as fully present to them as I could, to help them discover what they needed for themselves. Other questions that you might have brought to the call today about narrative coaching?
I have a couple of questions. One is a yes or no question. The other one maybe a little bit more lengthy. The yes or no question is, have you taught at CIIS in San Francisco as a visiting professor?
No, but I wish I had. I have great respect. I've worked with a number of the faculty there, but I've never actually taught there.
Okay. I guess, and then the other thing is, what's coming up for me is the kind of the deviation from the certifying bodies around there in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's considered to be, professional coaching in order to get the certificate. I mean, obviously much more than that. But in terms of expectation setting with clients, maybe clients have been coached before. I guess I don't have a clear question.
Sure.
Maybe it's more like, is it just kind of a little bit of expectation setting and the beginning of a relationship contracting, that I just want to let you know that my approach with narrative coaching perhaps is not what you have experienced in coaching? Is it anything like that
yeah, so
will do?
Yes. So for the first half, so you will get, I think it's 53 credit hours for the program when you finish. And we've had dozens and dozens and dozens of graduates who use those hours towards their ICF certifications. We're not an ICF certified program. I never have been, never will be, but people can still use the hours for their certification. The good news is I've given a lot back to ICF just because the world's a better place if ICF's better. But they've just updated their sort of rubric by which they sort of measure and look at coaching, and it's now more open than it ever has been. It's still not anywhere near narrative coaching, but narrative coaching, I can honestly, hand on heart, say we fulfill all their current requirements. Now, there's the norms in the system, as you said, are still very different than ours in a way. So I find the two things that our clients really look for from us, for me, are, do I like and trust this person, which you can model for them as a narrative coach easily, and will I get from this what I'm hoping to achieve? So outcomes. So we don't set goals in narrative coaching, but we're very committed to meaningful client outcomes. And so I want to model the first half. When people show up, I want to meet them in a way that may be even better than they might have been met by other coaches. Because we're actually meeting them exactly where they are. not where we would like them to be or where they should be, or we're not putting them into our frame the minute they sit down. We're just being present to them, which is a novel experience for many people, and already will start to differentiate you. And then sometimes there's some people that are very linear themselves, or maybe they're under a lot of pressure at work to achieve certain outcomes or goals or whatever. You can do that with them if that's hygienically necessary for them to do what they need to do in their organization. And part of it's just showing, as you said, just sharing with them, I'm very committed to outcomes that are important to you. And I'm also knowing from my experience that we may not know what those are or how to get there when we first start. In my two things I've never really experienced in 25 years was a client who said, I don't have enough goals and objectives in my life. Can you get me some more? They're trying to get rid of them, right? And secondly, I've rarely, if ever, experienced a client who actually knows what they want when they sit down. They might know what they don't want or what they don't like about their current life or their current job, but what the work's really going to be about, we don't know yet. So I don't want to chase after things that are not going to be relevant. So that's why we don't ask a lot of questions. We help people settle into the room and settle into the conversation, into the stories, to see what tries to bubble up and how that story is formed in that context and what that might reveal to us about where we might want to pay some attention. And so there are clients for whom, especially if they've had more traditional coaching, that there is some sort of translation you'll have to do in the beginning. And again, if you discover that there may be a more linear person or they're more used to traditional ways of, you can always adapt narrative coaching to meet them. You don't have to say, no, you have to go over here and do narrative coaching with me, my way. No, narrative coaching is really allows you to meet them exactly where they are and help them be on the journey they need to be on.
Great, thank you.
All right, and David's back.
Hello.
Hey, David.
Hi there. How far do you think you've come with your theories and ideas since you wrote your book?
So there's nothing in my book I would take back. So that's good. I think what I've, over the years, over the last 20 years, I'm less sort of wedded to the theory and the research that created narrative coaching. I'm more adept at modeling it, being in it, helping create experiences for people to be in it. I think there's some new bodies of work that I've studied since the book was out that are now woven into the way we teach. A big one for me is is helping people understand the mindset a narrative coach brings to a session is different than a mindset many of the coaches bring. And if you can't find your version of that mindset for you, the rest will be a bit more vexing. When I was able to travel more and I used to teach this work all over the world, by far my biggest, most frequent feedback to coaches in my program when they're practicing was, please stop coaching. Be quiet, pay attention, what's actually happening right in front of you. And to get people who often were in their head trying to coach. And what is my next question? They weren't even listening where they're getting their next question ready. And I said, just take a breath, relax, stop coaching. What are you noticing about this person's posture? What's happening on their face? What emotions do you sense that they're feeling? And just keep coming back to the present moment about what they're experiencing. So I think I'm a bit more courageous now in just naming that. And all the rest of most of the book is just the architecture. It was never designed to be a cookbook or a step-by-step guide. It was more like, this is sort of the definitive text. This is all the roots of where this work came from. And then since then, I've just been developing better and better ways, hopefully, to teach that.
Yeah, I get that feeling when I listen to you. You seem there's just such a depth in what you have to say in terms of your understanding of what you're offering, and it doesn't come through in the book to the degree it does.
No,
when I'm actually sitting here.
Yeah, and I wrote the book in the middle of a difficult divorce and things, and so I was just grateful to get it done. And I'll write I've written a lot of since then, and but yeah, so the book is what it is, and I'm proud of it for what it is, and I also know what it's not.
It's fascinating to
Yeah.
read. But, I feel I get so much more out of these conversations.
Good. Are there other thoughts or questions for right now? Then I want to share a little bit about ID, and then we can see what else is on your mind. All right, I'm just going to move. All right, so over the years, I was involved. A lot of the coaching I was doing was teaching coaching skills to teams, managers, and leaders to help them be better at leading change in organizations. So we did a lot of big projects for things, companies, et cetera, as well as a lot of like nonprofits and schools and things. But in that, I started to realize that a lot of the ways in which we work with our clients is often limited because we're put in a box. I'm a facilitator, I'm a coach, we're doing a training. And I started to realize that the projects where I felt most successful were ones where I just got to be David and could move around an organization in whatever, or a project in whatever form would be useful at that moment in time to move the project forward. All the methodologies that I've created are not meant to say, please impose this on a client. It's more, they're all reflections of how I observe people actually change. And then these are structures to help come alongside people to help them move through whatever change they're going through. And so originally, integrative development started out as a blend of organizational development, training, and coaching in one practice. It's since evolved to become much more because I started to realize that underneath this work for me was an implicit theory of learning and development, which was even more contrary to the norm that narrative coaching was for coaching. And so for me, we've been now doing experiments in universities and in schools, starting to reimagine what learning and development could actually look like. So one of the things you'll discover about me is I will say what I feel is true. But I'm not egoic enough to be attached to that. So I'm always learning and curious about what other perspectives are. But I often will just say what I feel is important. So one of the things I feel is important is that when we think about training, like in companies, there's often a collusion between buyers and sellers of training. And I started to realize that the primary variable in whether a training had an impact was not the quality of the training. That an average and a stellar training have the gap in terms of their outcomes is actually fairly small. But the hugest, by far the hugest, and the research now is borne this out, the biggest variable in this efficacy of a training is the readiness, willingness, and ability of the participants to actually do something. So I think about this for me. I went through a mutual friend. I went to this really eclectic small conference over the weekend. And a lot of these people are far less experienced than I am. They're not quite, they're fascinating people. But I gained two huge things from that conference. not because they were very good at what they were doing, but because I was in a space where I could take something from what they were doing and apply to something that was really present and important to me and make something happen with that. They were an important catalyst. So I'm very grateful for that. The actual quality of what a couple of them were doing, they were new. They weren't very good at some of this, and that was fine. I was able to take something that was extremely valuable for me from the experience. So it doesn't mean we shouldn't do a good job. It just means that for me, oftentimes we focus on the wrong things. And so I stopped doing training because people, when you look at the forgetting curve, you look at the impact of a lot of the work that we do, it doesn't have nearly the impact that we think it does. And so I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. So we've created a different approach to designing programs, projects, all kinds of things that we are in the early days of figuring out how to help this scale so we can help reimagine, for example, what school might look like or what training might look like. So I want to just give you one slide about that. I know it's pretty provocative, and then I want to give you a practice of it. So everything you need to know about ID is on this slide. Sort of kidding, but not really. So in this slide, imagine that you're walking, this is at a beginner ski class, people that have never skied before. The adults at the top are in this class to learn how to ski. The children in this class are in that class to ski. So guess which group learns how to ski faster? It's not the adults. They're comparing outfits, they're trying to look cool. Their only job is, I don't want to fall down, look dumb, and hurt myself, which of course then increases the odds that that actually happens. The kids are low to the ground. If they fall, it's not going to be, they're padded, their helmet, they just want to have fun and go down the hill. And most of us have lost the capacity to do that, which makes learning much more difficult. So the adult mantra is, I need to know before I do. A child's mantra is, I will do, and then hopefully I will know. Oh, I probably shouldn't ride my bike off the roof of the house. It's farther than I thought. And mommy yelled at me for being at the ER with me because I broke my arm. So we're trying to mitigate some of their costs that way. But so part of what we're doing in ID is freeing up the inner 5-year-old skiers in our clients. And so when we design programs, we're not there to teach them anything. We're working with real issues, real processes, real parts of their business, whatever, to help them discover for themselves, like, what are you doing now that's contributing to the outcomes that you don't want? And what might you need to be doing differently to make that better? But we don't send them to a training. So when I do big projects in this space, we usually just do a very short, like half-day session in the very beginning about ethnography, observation, narrative. And then we send people out to go observe themselves in the organization around the issue that they brought me in for. And then we gather and say, what did you observe about yourself? And then start naming all these things, like all their parts of their system or their culture that get in their way. And I said, how many of you have been to trainings on this? And they all raised their hand. How many have been to more than 5 of these, 10 of these, 15 of these? And yet you're still repeating the same patterns that you had the whole time. So adding a 16th training on whatever isn't going to make any difference whatsoever. So then we set out on this exploration about what would need to be different in order to make it easier for you to be at your best. And we give them lots of chances to experiment, to explore, to be in dialogue with each other. And it's a way for them to begin to discover what needs to change for them. And so oftentimes, if we do training, it's much later in the project, and it's done by people in the company or the organization that are already really good at this, not by me. And I'm helping to kind of shape and guide and support the initiative. But really, they're just going down the hill and seeing what they discover about just give you a simple example of what this looks like concretely. So one of the projects that was the first one I ever did this way from start to finish was an organization, a large organization that served disabled children and their families. And they had gotten a grant and saved some funds, and they wanted me to teach coaching skills to the, I don't know, 300 or 400 people that worked there. And I turned them down. I said, I won't do that. I know how hard that was for you to get that money. I'm not going to waste it putting you through a coaching program. And she's like, what? And she said, this is the director. Well, then what should we do instead? And I said, I don't know, but let's go figure that out. And so I went home that night and started pulling together all these pieces from other projects I had done. And I realized there's actually a methodology here. So I came back and I said, here's some of the pieces I think are going to be important. Let's figure this out together. And so one of the things that, for example, just fast forwarding in that project, which we did over 2 years, they were so successful compared to other programs in their state that they got the state legislature to rewrite policy on serving disabled children because their results were just so much better. And as an example of the work that we did, we had them sort of look at their service delivery model and say, if we were to go interview your families, what would they most wish you would improve? Or what did they like least about how you work with them? And the pretty much universal answer was the intake interview. So if you had a young child, and you called up and said, you know, I just noticed that my son is having a hard time playing with his friends, or doesn't seem to be keeping up with certain things they are. I just want to know some more. And they'd come in, and the staff would take this child through a series of assessments and observations, and then they would prepare sort of a report about this. And then the parents would come in. And so I said, so just go out and watch each other as you do this. So they would sit in the back of the room watching their peers up front. So first thing, they noticed the parents are out here. They're all over here on, you know, up on this little like riser. They're often, 2 of them are in white lab coats, and they're all like here. And the parents are over here, you know, they have no idea what's really going on about all this. And then they've got a report that's about this thick. And then they talk to them for an hour about all the things in the report. And one of which might have been that we believe that your son has moderate autism. And then they would go on and on, and then they would say, any questions? And I said to them, and I said, what did you observe? And they were just horrified. And I said, that's what we sound like. That's what we look like. And they said, after you said the word autism, they didn't hear a single word you said, nor are they ever going to read that document. And they may not even come back because it's too much. So then I said, so if you were to make this a actually user-centered experience, how would you do this differently? And so they went off in these little work groups, and they came up with things they were going to stop doing, things they were going to do differently. And I said, what if you gave them a single sheet? Take this home. Because I said, what do you think is the most important outcome of this meeting? Well, they need to understand what's happening for their son. No, the most important outcome for the meeting is to get them to come back and to feel empowered to engage you to work with them on their son, with their son. And so they reformatted the entire process from top to bottom. And then they said, but then we feel really vulnerable because they're going to ask us personal questions. Great. So how could you help yourself get better at that? So ID is basically a way of approaching projects or designing programs that actually work with what I believe is a much more natural way that people learn, rather than trying to train them how to do something. There are elements of training that do happen along the way, but they're in service to what the participants themselves have identified is important to them and is directly involving things that relate to their actual work, not to hypothetical concepts. So I'm just going to stop there. That's just a little small taste in 5 minutes or so. I just want to see if there's any questions you have about this at the moment, or any thoughts that come up for you. And then I want to give you a small practice, and then we'll see what else we'd like to talk about. So if this is
So-
something that would be interesting to you, what questions do you have?
So the coursework for the ID class, it revolves around doing what? Is it like the coaching class where it's more we're going to go through that process for ourselves, or is it like design of a larger scale project? What's involved in that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So they all of the programs, all three of our programs actually have the same structure. They're 9 months. There's three-month blocks. The first month is the mindset that one is invited to explore to be able to work that way. The middle 3 months are about the process itself. And the last 3 months are what are some of the unique skills you need to be able to do this well. One of the things we're going to be doing differently this year is we're moving even more of the maybe conceptual work or theoretical work offline. So it'll be in a library for you. There'll be a whole raft of videos from me kind of going into some of the depth of where this all came from, which will free up more chances for you all to practice. So in the ID program, you will learn some of the sort of skills that are involved, some of the processes that are involved. And again, this is not so you can know now to do later. So we're going to invite you to be a 5-year-old skier from the beginning. Not to necessarily have huge projects, but we're going to ask you to have small projects, to approach something differently in whatever way is meaningful for you, to begin to notice what this feels like to work this way. So like, for example, in this disabilities program, these are mostly mental health, physical health people. So they're used to being the expert, which means that you're not. And I said, well, no, actually, the family spends 24/7 with this child. You see them an hour a week. Who do you think has more impact on the child? It's not you. You're there as a resource to help the parents be successful. So that's a big shift for a lot of us that are used to being the expert in the room. And so we want to create more opportunities for you to practice that as we move through the program. As part of the portfolio, there will be some kind of reporting on that. Not everybody has the interest in access to big projects, so it might be a portfolio of small projects. And for me, though, it's really helping to put the mindset in action and to, go from there. Does that help? Great.
I have a question. Does
Yes,
the narrative coaching component of the credited hours, the coaching hours, does that apply to this particular program as well?
So one of the things we're doing for the first time, we haven't gotten a definitive answer back, but you get the same number of credit hours in both programs. But what I realized last year that in the end, a lot of this, ICF wouldn't agree with me, but for me, there's a lot of the same coaching competencies here that there are in narrative coaching. And so we're in the middle of, I'm working with the ID faculty to kind of parse out how many of those you actually could use as credit hours for ICF certification. Because really, in some ways, I kept getting all these requests from my clients when I would coach them or do like team coaching with them around narrative. Well, they say, can we just do this for everybody? And I said, well, yeah, but so then I had to kind of reframe what coaching was. And I said, yes, but it's not going to be in a coaching context. Literally, it's going to be more figurative about how would you bring a coaching mindset to an organizational project or to designing a program. And so then I thought I needed more scaffolding to be able to take a coaching model. And I mean, things like, so I spent a few days with Nike that years ago when they had piloted one of their very first global enterprise-wide systems on the IT side. It didn't work. The pilot didn't work, and they couldn't understand why. Their consultants couldn't figure out why. And so the woman that was the global training director said, can you just come talk to us? I said, sure. So I came and listened to their stories and heard in their stories 3 things that seemed like they were barriers to what they were trying to do. We developed a program to engage their subject matter experts to think about the project differently, and they were able to be successful. So in there was no real formal coaching, but I was using a coaching mindset to help them see their own environment differently. Yeah, and so by the time you get to the program, if you take this program, by the time it starts in January, or even before then, we'll have calculated how many of those hours we think ICF would accept, if that's what's important to you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that for me, because there's of course some thoughts that have come up too around this. I think I don't have any like formalized coaching training on this side. I do come from the physical coaching world, where it does incorporate some motivational interviewing and some things like that. And so a lot of it's just been trying to figure out, well, which path is the best to go. I think en route for trying to apply this to my business structure and being able to work with a one-to-many situation, this is probably the better route to go.
Yeah.
And so there is a level of excitement of kind of feeling like a blank slate in some ways.
Yeah.
Because reading your book, the reason why it resonates with me so much is because, you know, and applying things to my own personal life and looking at things from the lens of how did I get through some of the things that I've gotten through, a lot of that has been around narrative shift.
Yeah.
And reframing my narrative and my position in that. And so it's been really exciting to be able to see or read material that feels really closely related to that. Because that's actually what I do with people now as well. So it's exciting to kind of see that there is something out there that exists. And I definitely was interested more in hearing about the ID, as that is the pathway for a one-to-many approach.
Yeah, and the beauty. So, just as with narrative coaching, but in ID, I'm not teaching you how I work, because I am a different person than all of you. I have a different path. I'm integrating different elements of myself in the way that we're going to invite you to do the same. So. We will show you some of the frames that we use, but in that you will become your own integrative development practitioner. That if every one of you were in that program, it would look differently for each of you, because you're bringing different skills, different experiences, different degrees to an integrative practice. So some of you might be more therapeutic in the way this shows up. Some of you might be more organizational in the way this shows up. So for me, it's like the most, in some ways, the most advanced of all these three, because it's the willingness to put yourself out there in whatever context you're in from an ID perspective. But they all share the same same fundamental mindset. They all share some of the same skills and practices. This one actually is the one that's more wide open to be able to bring to a wider variety of situations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Erin.
If we haven't taken the narrative coaching program, do you recommend that first? Or I thought I read that maybe elements of that are integrated into this. Can you help me understand sort of the
so if you've taken narrative coaching before, parts of ID will feel familiar to you. If you've never taken narrative coaching, you'll be totally fine. I would say in our current cohort, half the people have taken, it's probably about half and half. Half came through narrative coaching, half came out of nowhere. They had no background with me whatsoever. So that, the narrative coaching, again, is more one-on-one or one on a team, but it's also much more focused on the stories themselves, where we don't talk about stories very much in ID. And so if the story part is what intrigues you, the one-on-one or the then that's probably the better fit. This focuses a lot more on the learning and development theory, which then can be applied. So we have a lot of facilitators in this group. We have a number of consultants. We have some First Nations, people who work with First Nations a lot in Canada. They find the ID way very useful. I've been running a Aboriginal leadership program in Australia for 5 years with some coaches there that I've trained, and that whole ID approach and narrative coaching approach are really fit well for that culture. They don't want a training. I don't want to give them a training. It's insulting. So if you've never had any background in any of this and you just walked right into, what's going to strap on the skis and point you down the hill. Yeah, Peter.
Well, recently I've taken on a lot of training work. see, there's just like lots and lots and lots of script and materials.
I used to have those.
And yeah, it's a bit challenging because I'm struggling with where is the learning really going to happen here, since there's so much script. And then I hear you talking about this integrated development approach, and like, okay, I want, how can I overcome this this doubt or this challenge that I have about the learning effectiveness, or even my own like passion for being a facilitator in this context, by bringing something new, cutting edge from ID. Like, I'm just like, maybe you could tell me, what would I be able to bring from going through ID into this kind of very traditional context?
Yeah. So again, each of you will come to ID, if you come to ID with varying levels of comfort. Many of the bigger projects I've done with ID started traditionally, and then I was able to build the relationship, build the trust, invite them into new possibilities. And then there were some that were very courageous, and we just did ID from the very beginning. But for me, it is challenging. And so oftentimes to sell ID, I would just demonstrate ID in the interview rather than try to explain it. I would just do ID with them. And when you get clients that are actually honest, I find they're more open to the reality that we do training because that's what we've done for 100 years. And you can't get fired for doing a good training. And so for me, I oftentimes will do small pilots, we'll do demonstrations, we'll work on little projects just to show them what this looks like. So, and the example that I found very effective is, so like many of you, I've been hired to do all kinds of programs in the past. And so maybe it's a program on giving effective feedback. And you have 30 people sitting in front of you as the class starts. You have 30 different sets of needs about feedback. You have 30 different levels of readiness about feedback. You have 30 different levels of engagement in the topic from the get-go. Why do we think one curriculum or one design is going to get anywhere near meeting any of those needs? Half the people are going to be bored, half are lost, half don't want to be there. I mean, it's like, I'm trying to figure out the way we design this is for each person to discover what is it you're actually ready and willing to learn that would make feedback better for you. And so then what happens, the easiest way to think about this, and then is you just take all the things you know about the topic and put it in your back pocket. And then you create opportunities in the workshop for people to bump into what they need. Like, for example, when I used to teach feedback to leaders, the most difficult thing for most of them was, I don't know how to start the conversation. Because they feel embarrassed, or they feel anxious, or they don't want to hurt their feelings. And so I said, so if we could help you come up with an opening sentence, would that be helpful to you? Yes. So we would just send them off in a small group. Well, just try a bunch, like write a bunch of them down, try them out with each other until you hone one that works for you. So I said, if I can point you down the hill on your skis with your first sentence, most of you have decent enough skills to do what comes next. So you can use ID and even sort of adapting traditional workshops. You can create ID moments in traditional workshops where you notice like, this person's actually now ready and open to learn this. How can I intervene here that would allow them to make the most of that? For me, this is a 20-year project because we're going up against a lot of norms about how learning is supposed to happen. And in my experience, it never was useful for most of adults, and is even less useful in the world that we're in now. In the world, the traditional approach to training, for example, assumes you know what they need to be doing. And I feel like even for myself, and I consider myself a master at a lot of this, no one knows what we need now. No one knows where this is all going and what we actually would find fruitful. So why would I try to build a program trying to teach you, go here and do this, follow those 5 steps and it'll work for you. And so for me, it's just like, let's go figure this out together. What do you need for you to be successful at this? All right. I'm conscious of time. I'm happy to stay on if you have other questions, but I also know that some of you might need to go at the bottom of the hour. So this is just a practice that we do to help people kind of drop into what is the crux of the issue for this person right now. That's where we want to meet them, not stirring up more water on the top by more content and more material, but like just being present. What is it you actually need to learn right now and are able to learn? I'll skip that, Chris. So these are just our 3 programs. You can, if you go onto our website, if you're not there already, you can sign up in the wait list, because the wait list opens up in about a week. In terms of registration, there's some goodies we've got available for people that join us through our early bird process. But these are sort of the distinctions I would make between the 3 programs. And again, I would just focus on which one would be most relevant and useful for you right now in your stage of your life, career, business. Where would you like to get better in terms of what kind of opportunities would you most want to spend your time on? And that would give you some sense of where you might want to focus your attention. All the 3 programs are built the same way across the 9 months. We follow a very experiential process so that we can help you really embed what you're learning in that particular module for that month and apply it and see it in action. Yeah. So I'm just going to stop there and I'll put up the last slide here, but if there's any sort of final thoughts or questions you'd like to ask, and again, if you need more time, I'm happy to stay on for a little bit after that we're done.
Hi, David. I think you answered my question.
Okay, good. I like that.
My burning question. So
okay.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. Check the chat box.
I think I saw one slide back that was like just more logistics, like cost, timeline stuff. I think that would be helpful for me to see if that was what I glimpsed.
Yeah, it is. Good eyes. So these are the 4 sort of pieces we move through each week of our modules. They all follow the same rhythm. So one is sort of initiate you into that module. What are the core elements of it? You work with our faculty to kind of practice some of it, start to figure out what this is useful to you, relevant for you, kind of immerse yourself in it. Again, as more of a 5-year-old skier than learning more stuff. And then we've got mastermind groups and peer triads to actually help you implement it yourself. Go try some of it, see what it's like for you, what you're discovering, what you learn. And then we have an integration at the end of each module for a chance for you to share with your peers, this is what I'm learning from this module, this is what I'm doing differently. We found that kind of wrapping up each module gives people a chance to say, hey, this one piece I never did get this module. I was never quite clear, so that people feel complete with the module before they move on to the next one. Just to give us all a bit more breather, the programs are 9 months now instead of 10. But what we're going to do is we'll start our lab in earnest in January. So it gives you as a student opportunities to interact with graduates, to be a part of other things that we're doing at the Institute. and give you way more time to practice, even outside the program. So for the year that you're in, starting in January, you'll have 12 months of a membership in the lab. And so you're basically getting 6 months for free of the lab. To continue to embed you in a community of narrative coaches or ID practitioners, just to kind of help you sort of begin to connect with others who are on the same journey. And then we're going to offer certifications separately. We've decided to make a huge investment to upgrade our certification programs, so that more people feel more confident in leaving it. And so we're going to make that available in January and July. So you can start in either one. So some people might be ready for certification within 3 months after finishing the program. Some people might want to just hang out in the lab more and just like continue to network, practice. They're not ready or interested in certification yet. They maybe want to start in July. One of the cool things that we're starting next year is our first ever advanced program for graduates. And we're using a really cool video-based AI platform that I'm involved with as a way to help accelerate people's capacity to get support for their practice. And so we're doing a lot of beta testing around the world at the moment and finding great results for people being able to see themselves in practice and get immediate feedback on how they're doing. So that will be part of what we offer starting next year as well. Yeah. So I don't know, we probably have 3,000 or 4,000 narrative coaching graduates. We have about 300 ID graduates. We just started that 2 years ago. Yeah, we want to welcome you into the community, not just see you as a participant in the program.
David, just for clarification purposes, looking at the differences over here on the right.
Yes.
Is the difference between just the certification program and the 3497 option the access to the threshold lab?
Yeah. So we're putting more into the main program, and we're also giving you 6 months free in addition to of the lab. It would cost more. The price would be higher if we charge you for the full 12 months. And so that's sort of intact in itself. And so we're, like I said, it's a stronger program in all cases, and it includes the lab experience. And then when you come back for certification in either of the two programs that offer certification, that's a 5-month process. The lab's also included in that. And it's an additional fee, but it's a much more robust certification now, because we want you to feel like you can go and do the work. You feel more confident, more complete. What we discovered before was that a lot of what we were doing was challenging a lot of what they believed about coaching, for example. And they got to the end and they were certified, but they really hadn't fully grasped what had just happened, because it was also new and transformative for them. And so we wanted to kind of let the program just be complete, let it breathe, let people catch up to themselves, like reflect on what they've just done, kind of integrate it further into their practice, and then come back and say, now I'm ready to be certified. So that's why we're changing this up. And therefore, doing it this way, we can offer them much more support and certification than we could before, when it was part of the program itself.
Gotcha. So the first one with the threshold lab, is that a prerequisite for the certification?
Yes, unless you did the WBEX program before and you've already been through a narrative coaching program.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts, reflections on our time?
I was just wondering, hi, it's David again, where you spent most of your time personally, because it looks like a lot of courses, you can't be everywhere.
No, so so two things. One is that I'm bringing in all of our faculty from around the world, and actually next week for 3.5 days to build out some of these new things together, really enable them to do more of the teaching. So I will do the initial main session. I will make way more videos. So you'll have all of my voice, all of my thoughts, all of my everything. I'll be tracking what happens we have built a more robust forum this year online. So I'll be engaged there, answering questions and whatnot. I will be more active in co-teaching the narrative release program, only because that's newer. For me personally, things I've discovered is that I do best as a scout. I go out and I discover what I think's on the horizon, what I think people need, and I bring it back. But to my faculty, that gets a bit disorienting because they're just trying to teach what we're doing and they don't want more. And so I just need to be free to go do that. I've got more books in the work. There's a deepening of particularly around ID and NR that I want to do, but I can't do that if I'm in the middle of teaching it. Because again, it gets challenging for students because they're trying to grasp the basics and I'm already off to advanced topics. And so I just, at this stage for a while anyways, I want to be able to be free to go do that. And we have an extraordinary team now. It's really quite strong. And so, and what we know from the research is that people learn best from people just ahead of them on the curve. So you actually, in some ways, I'm finding that you will actually learn more from the faculty than from me, because and my role in this is different. And so there's, yeah, so some of it we planned, some of it may emerge in terms of other ways I can support the participants. But yeah, so I'm right now, I've got my own research and my own kind of what I'm working on in terms of next bodies of work, but I need to be separate from more of the teaching than the past. Otherwise it congests the teaching and distracts me from the research I need to be doing.
Thanks.
And then in a year or two, that will all feed back into the program. So it will come back to participants and graduates, just not quite yet.
Thanks.
Yeah. So is there anything you'd hope to get from this that you haven't yet that you'd like to ask, or what else would help you feel complete?
Well, for me, I think the piece that I still need is now going to be thinking about this afterward.
Okay.
I came in thinking that I was all in on narrative coaching, but now you've really got me considering IDWay, and I need to figure out what the right path is.
Okay. Yeah. And if you you can I think I'll add this to the next slide, to the last slide. It's not there now, but if you have more, you'll get an email in a couple hours after this, just thanking you for coming, and there'll be an email address at miconnect@themomentinstitute.com. If you've got more questions, you want to know more, or you need more help deliberating, just write us and we'll help you sort that out. The good news, it doesn't matter which order you do them in. It's mostly where do you want to begin now that seems most timely for you right now. There's no real advantage to taking one before the other. Yeah, just kind of discerning for yourself what fits the best for you right now. If we can help with that in any way, let us know. Anything else? Make sure I haven't missed anything in the chat box. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, well, hearing none, again, reach out if you need anything more. I just want to wish you well for the rest of your day or evening, and thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right,
David.
be well.
Thank you.
David.
Bye.